Evren didn't know the man watching her from the tree line was the Alpha King. She didn't know he'd spent 6 years tracking a scent that haunted his every waking moment. A scent that had led him across 3 kingdoms, through cursed territories, and finally, to the shores of an island no one had survived in over a century. And she definitely didn't know that the blood running through her veins was the reason she'd been abandoned on this island to die. All she knew was that something felt wrong today. The Veil had been her prison and her sanctuary for 10 years. A jagged crown of volcanic rock rising from waters so treacherous that ships steered miles around it. The locals called it cursed. Sailors whispered that the island swallowed anyone foolish enough to set foot on its black sand beaches. They weren't entirely wrong. Evren had been 8 years old when the boat dropped her here with nothing but a torn dress and a name she barely remembered. She'd screamed for days, waiting for someone to come back. No one did. So she'd learned to stop screaming and start surviving. Now, at 18, she moved through the dense forest like a ghost. Her bare feet knew every root, every stone, and every patch of ground that would hold her weight, and every patch that would swallow her whole. Her dark hair hung in matted waves past her shoulders, threaded with small bones and feathers, not for decoration, but to ward off the shadow cats that hunted at dusk. Her skin was bronzed from years under the sun, crisscrossed with pale scars that told stories she preferred not to remember. She was checking her fishing traps when the feeling hit her. A prickle at the base of her skull, the hairs on her arms rising, every instinct she'd honed over a decade of isolation suddenly screaming one word: danger. Evren froze, her hand still submerged in the tidal pool. She didn't breathe, didn't blink, just listened. The jungle was never silent. There was always the chatter of birds, the rustle of wind through palm fronds, the distant crash of waves against the cliffs. But beneath those familiar sounds, she heard something else. A heartbeat that wasn't hers. Slow, controlled. The heartbeat of a predator who knew how to wait. Her eyes swept the tree line to her left. Nothing. The rocks behind her. Empty. The dense brush to the east where the shadow cats made their dens. Still. Then she looked north, toward the ridge where the old ruins crumbled into the mountainside. A figure stood among the trees. Evren's heart slammed against her ribs. In 10 years, she had not seen another human being. She'd started to wonder if she'd imagined what people looked like. If the memories of faces and voices were just fever dreams from the early days when loneliness had nearly driven her mad. But this was no dream. He was real. Tall, broad, watching her with an intensity that made her blood run cold. And he'd found a way onto an island that was supposed to be unreachable. Evren bolted. She ran like the island had taught her, not in a straight line, but in sharp zigzags through the undergrowth. Over fallen logs thick with moss, under low-hanging vines that would slice an outsider's skin to ribbons. Through the narrow ravine where the rocks were slick with spray, and one wrong step meant a shattered ankle. She knew this terrain. He didn't. But when she burst into the clearing by the freshwater spring, already planning her next 3 moves, he was there, standing at the water's edge like he'd been waiting for hours. Evren skidded to a halt, her breath ragged, and her pulse thundering. That defied explanation. She'd taken the fastest route, the only route. No one could have beaten her here. "I'm not going to hurt you." His voice hit her like a physical force, deep, rough, carrying an authority that seemed woven into the sound itself. She hadn't heard another voice in so long that for a moment she couldn't process the words. Only the tone. Calm, deliberate. The voice of someone accustomed to obedience. Evren crouched lower, her hand finding the bone knife strapped to her thigh. She'd killed shadow cats with this blade. She'd kill him too if she had to. "Stay back." Her own voice came out cracked, hoarse from disuse. She spoke to herself sometimes, just to remember how, but it had been weeks since she'd bothered. The man didn't move. He simply watched her, those winter-gray eyes tracking every micro-movement she made, cataloging and calculating. He was dressed in dark leather and cloth that looked too fine for travel, though it was now salt-stained and torn in places. His black hair was pushed back from a face that was all hard angles and controlled power, a scar cutting through his left eyebrow and disappearing into his hairline. He looked like a man who had walked through hell to get here. "You're faster than I expected," he said. "The reports didn't mention that." Reports. The word sliced through her survival instincts and lodged somewhere deeper. Someone had written reports about her. Someone knew she was here. Had known. Maybe for years. "Who are you?" She hated how the question trembled. "My name is Theron." He said it simply. No titles, no elaboration, but the name tugged at something in the back of her mind. A memory too old and faded to grasp. "How did you find this place?" "I've been searching for a long time." "For the island?" "For you." The words landed like stones in still water, sending ripples through everything she thought she understood. Evren shook her head, the knife trembling in her grip. "No one's looking for me. No one knows I exist." Something flickered across his face, an emotion too fast to name, but his voice remained even. "I know you exist, Evren. I've known for 6 years." Her name. He knew her name. "How do you know that name?" Evren's voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through the humid air like a blade. She hadn't heard anyone speak her name since she was 8 years old. She'd almost forgotten it belonged to her. Theron took a single step forward. She matched it with a step back. He stopped, raising one hand slowly, palm out, a gesture of peace that somehow made him look more dangerous, not less. "Because I've been hunting for you since the bond revealed you were alive," he said. "Because your scent is burned into my memory, and I would have crossed 1,000 cursed islands to find you." Her scent. The words made no sense. She opened her mouth to demand answers, but he spoke first. "I'm the Alpha King of the Veilcrest territories. Theron Veilcrest. Alpha King." The title crashed into her like a wave, dragging up memories she'd buried so deep she'd forgotten they existed. Stories her mother had whispered in the dark, the great wolf kingdoms beyond the sea, the bloodlines that could shift between forms. Evren had thought they were fairy tales, the kind of nonsense adults told children to make them behave. "That's not real," she breathed. "Shifters aren't real." In answer, his eyes changed. One moment they were gray as a winter storm. The next, they burned molten gold, bright and inhuman, holding a primal power that made every instinct she possessed scream at her to run. "We're real," he said quietly, and his voice had dropped to something rougher, something that resonated in her chest like a drumbeat. "And so are you." "I'm not—" She couldn't finish the sentence because somewhere beneath her terror, beneath 10 years of isolation and denial, something stirred, something that had always felt different, wrong, other. "I'm human." "You're more than human, Evren. You always have been." Theron's jaw tightened. "You were hidden here for a reason. Someone wanted you erased from existence. They nearly succeeded." "Who? Why?" "Because of what you are. Because of what you carry in your blood." He took another step forward, and this time she didn't retreat. Couldn't. Her legs had stopped obeying her. "You're the last living heir of the Valdris bloodline, the oldest shifter lineage in existence, a line everyone believed was extinct." The words washed over her, too enormous to absorb. Heir. Bloodline. Extinct. "And because of what you are to me," he added, his voice dropping even lower. "What does that mean?" Theron was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, each word sounded like it was being pulled from somewhere deep, somewhere guarded. "It means that for 6 years I've felt a bond I couldn't explain to a person I couldn't find. It means I haven't taken a mate, haven't even been able to look at another woman because every part of me has been waiting." His golden eyes held hers, raw and unguarded. You're my mate, Evren. My fated. And I need you to come with me. Evren's world tilted. Mate. Fated. A bond she didn't choose and didn't understand, connecting her to a stranger who'd appeared from nowhere claiming to be a king. And if I say no, then I'll leave. The answer surprised her. But I should tell you something first. What? I'm not the only one who knows you survived. His expression hardened, something cold and dangerous flickering beneath the surface. And the people who left you here to die are coming back to finish what they started. Coming back. The words echoed in Evren's skull like a warning bell. For 10 years, she'd believed she was forgotten, abandoned and erased. Now this stranger was telling her that her exile had been deliberate, and worse, temporary. Who? The question scraped out of her throat. Who's coming? The same people who put you here. Theron's voice was granite. A faction within my own court. They orchestrated the massacre of your family, then hid you on this island to ensure no Valdris heir could ever challenge their power. Massacre. The word landed like a blow. She had no memories of family, no faces, no names. Just a hollow ache she'd learned to ignore. Your parents, your older brother, 37 members of your household. Theron's jaw clenched. I was 12 when it happened. I found the aftermath. Evren's stomach turned. And you've been looking for me since then? Since I turned 16 and the bond manifested. I felt you, out there somewhere, alive. But I couldn't pinpoint where. His golden eyes dimmed back to gray, and somehow that made him look more exhausted than before. Every lead was a dead end. Every trail went cold. Until 3 months ago, when one of the conspirators made a mistake. What kind of mistake? He got drunk. Mentioned an island no one returns from. Said it was almost time to tie up loose ends. Theron's expression went dark. I had his throat in my hands within the hour. He told me everything before he died. The casual admission of violence should have frightened her. Instead, something strange flickered in Evren's chest. This man had killed for information about her, had spent 6 years chasing a ghost, had crossed cursed waters to find her. No one had ever fought for her. No one had ever wanted her enough to try. If I go with you, she said slowly, testing the words, what happens? I take you somewhere safe, somewhere they can't reach you while I dismantle their network. His voice softened, just barely. And I help you understand what you are. Unlock what's been dormant inside you. Dormant? You've never shifted, have you? It wasn't really a question. You should have had your first transformation at 13. The island's energy suppresses it, but once you leave, it will surface. The thought sent ice through her veins. Something living inside her, waiting to emerge. A beast she'd never met. I don't trust you, she said flatly. I know. I don't trust anyone. I know that too. Theron reached into his coat and withdrew a small blade, the handle wrapped in worn leather. Without hesitation, he drew it across his palm. Blood welled up, dark and red. Then don't trust me. Bind me instead. Evren stared at the blood. What? A blood oath. Unbreakable. I swear on my life and my lineage that I will not harm you, trap you, or force you to stay. You will have complete freedom to leave whenever you choose. He extended his bleeding hand. Will that be enough? Her heart hammered. A blood oath was old magic, the kind her mother had whispered about. Binding, permanent. If he broke it, he would die. She pulled her bone knife free and made the cut before she could talk herself out of it. Their palms met, and the world exploded. The sensation was indescribable. Lightning and wildfire and something ancient roaring through her veins, connecting them at a level so deep she couldn't tell where she ended, and he began. Evren gasped, her knees buckling, but Theron caught her, his free arm wrapping around her waist while their bloodied hands stayed pressed together. Breathe. His voice was strained, rough, like he was fighting the same overwhelming tide. Just breathe. She couldn't. The bond was alive between them, pulsing with every heartbeat, filling the hollow spaces inside her with warmth she didn't recognize. For one exhilarating moment, she felt what he felt. The relief of finally finding her, the fear of losing her again. A longing so fierce it stole her breath. Then the magic sealed, and the intensity faded to a low hum beneath her skin. Theron released her hand slowly, his chest heaving. When their eyes met, she saw the same stunned recognition reflected back at her. Neither of them spoke about it. The journey off the island took 3 days. Theron had a ship anchored in a hidden cove on the eastern shore, crewed by 6 warriors who looked at Everin like she was a miracle and a threat rolled into one. She ignored them, focusing on the strange sensation of wooden planks beneath her feet instead of solid earth, of salt spray that didn't come from her familiar cliffs. When the veil finally disappeared behind them, swallowed by mist and distance, Everin felt something crack inside her chest. That island had been her cage, but it had also been the only home she remembered. Theron found her at the stern that night, watching the stars. "You'll see it again," he said quietly. "If you want to. After everything is settled." "Why would I want to go back to a prison?" "Because it kept you alive." His shoulder brushed hers as he leaned against the railing. "That makes it sacred, even if it was also a cage." She didn't know how to respond to that, didn't know how to process kindness wrapped in understanding. 5 days later, they reached the mainland. The Veilcrest stronghold rose from the mountains like it had grown there, all dark stone and sharp towers and banners snapping in the wind. It should have looked cold, forbidding. Instead, as they passed through the massive gates, Everin saw children playing in the courtyard. Merchants haggling over goods, warriors laughing as they sparred. Life, noise, people. Her chest tightened with something close to panic. "It's overwhelming." Theron's voice was low, meant only for her. "I know. But you're safe here. No one will touch you, speak to you, or even look at you without your permission." "You can guarantee that?" "I'm the Alpha King." A hint of dry humor flickered in his eyes. "My word tends to carry weight." Despite everything, Everin almost smiled. Almost. The first week was torture, not because anyone was cruel, the opposite actually. Everin was given chambers larger than the entire cave system she'd called home for a decade. Servants brought food she didn't have to hunt, catch, or cook. A woman named Brea, with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair, was assigned to help her adjust, teaching her how to use the copper bathing tub, how to work the complicated clasps on the clothes that appeared in her wardrobe. Everyone was patient. Everyone was gentle. And Everin had never felt more out of place in her life. She didn't know how to eat at a table with utensils, didn't know how to make conversation that wasn't about hunting or weather. The first 3 nights, she dragged the furs onto the stone floor and curled up there instead, her back against the wall, her knife in her hand. Old habits didn't die. They waited. But the hardest part wasn't the adjustment. It was the awakening. Theron had warned her that leaving the island would unlock her dormant abilities. He hadn't warned her it would feel like being torn apart from the inside. It started on the 4th day. A fever that came from nowhere, burning through her until she was soaked in sweat and shaking. Then the pain, deep in her bones, like her skeleton was trying to reshape itself. She screamed into her pillow until her throat was raw, unable to stop it. Theron was there within minutes. She didn't know how he knew, didn't care. She only knew that when the agony crested, his hands were on her face, cool against her burning skin, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Look at me. Everin, look at me." His eyes glowed amber, and somehow that steadied her. An anchor in the storm. "You're not dying. Your wolf is waking up. She's been trapped for 10 years and she's fighting to get out." "Make it stop," Everin gasped. "I can't, but I can help you through it." He climbed onto the bed without hesitation, gathering her against his chest, his arms creating a cocoon around her. Focus on my heartbeat. Match your breathing to mine. She tried, but the thing inside her was wild with desperation, clawing at her ribs, howling for release. She's scared, Theron murmured against her hair. She's been alone in the dark for so long. She doesn't know if she can trust you to let her out. I don't know how. You don't have to know. You just have to stop fighting. His hand pressed flat against her sternum, over her racing heart. She's not your enemy, Evren. She's you, the part of yourself you were never allowed to meet. Something about his words broke through the panic. Evren stopped resisting the pain and let it wash over her instead. The agony peaked, unbearable, absolute. Then it receded. She collapsed against Theron's chest, trembling violently and tears streaming down her face. She hadn't cried since she was 8 years old. He didn't tell her it was okay, didn't offer empty platitudes. He just held her, one hand stroking her back in slow circles, his chin resting on top of her head. You did well, he said finally. Most wolves take days to reach that point. You did it in hours. It didn't feel like doing well. Transformation never does. His voice was quiet. The first time I shifted, I was 13. I broke 3 bones because I was too scared to let go. My father held me through the whole thing. Evren pulled back slightly, looking up at him. His face was shadowed in the dim room, but she could see the vulnerability there, a piece of himself offered in exchange for her pain. What happened to him? She asked. He was killed in the same attack that took your family. No bitterness, just fact. The conspirators wanted both bloodlines weakened. They nearly succeeded. I'm sorry. So am I. His thumb brushed a tear from her cheek. But you're here now, and together, we're going to make them pay for every life they stole. The training began the next morning. Theron was relentless, but never cruel. He pushed her body to its limits, teaching her hand-to-hand combat, blade work, how to use her heightened senses to track movement and predict attacks. Every muscle screamed. Every night she collapsed into bed so exhausted she didn't have energy to drag the furs to the floor anymore. But something else was happening too. Their connection was intensifying. She felt it in the way her pulse calmed when he entered a room, the way his scent, pine and wood smoke, and something wilder beneath, had become synonymous with safety. The way his rare smiles made her chest ache in ways she didn't understand. 2 weeks after her arrival, she finally shifted. It happened at sunset, in the private courtyard behind Theron's chambers. One moment she was human, frustrated and sweating from another failed attempt. The next, her bones were reshaping, her skin rippling, and then she was standing on 4 legs, looking at the world through golden eyes. She was a wolf, silver-white fur, lean and powerful, smaller than Theron's massive black form but built for speed. And she was beautiful. Theron shifted beside her, his wolf pressing against hers in greeting. They ran together through the mountain forests until the moon rose high, and Evren felt something she'd never experienced before. Freedom. True, complete, boundless freedom. When they shifted back, both breathless and exhilarated, they were on a cliff overlooking the valley below. The stronghold glittered in the distance, torches flickering like earthbound stars. How do you feel? Theron asked. He'd wrapped his cloak around her shoulders without her noticing, and the warmth of it made her shiver for reasons that had nothing to do with cold. Alive, she said honestly. For the first time in my life, I feel completely alive. His expression softened in the moonlight. I felt the same way the first time I ran with my father, like the world finally made sense. I wish I'd had that. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Someone to run with, someone to teach me. You have it now. Theron turned to face her fully, and there was something raw in his eyes. Evren, I need to tell you something. Her heart stuttered. What? I'm trying very hard not to overwhelm you. His voice was rough, strained. You've been through more than anyone should endure. You deserve time to adjust, to choose your own path without pressure from me or from this bond. But every day it gets harder. He stepped closer, and she could feel the heat radiating from him. Every time I watch you fight, every time I see you push through something that would break anyone else, every time you smile like the world hasn't given you a single reason to smile, I want things I have no right to want. What things? His hand lifted slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his fingers traced her jaw with a tenderness that made her breath catch. You, he said simply. Not because of the bond, not because of politics or bloodlines or prophecy. Just you. His thumb brushed her lower lip. The woman who endured the unendurable. Who didn't let 10 years of hell make her cruel? Who looks at me like I'm just a man, not a king? Evren's heart was pounding so hard she was certain he could hear it. Theron, I'm not asking for anything, he continued quickly. I need you to know that, when this is over, when the conspirators are dealt with, you're free to go wherever you want. The blood oath guarantees it. He exhaled shakily. I needed you to know this is real for me, whatever you decide. She should have been scared. A month ago, she'd never been touched with kindness, had never been wanted for anything but what she could do or what she represented. Every instinct she'd built told her to run, to protect herself, to never let anyone close enough to hurt her. But Theron had held her through her awakening, had trained her without condescension, had given her freedom at every turn, asking nothing in return. So instead of running, Evren rose on her toes and kissed him. He went completely still. For one horrible second, she thought she'd misread everything. Then his arms came around her, crushing her against him, and he kissed her back like she was air and he'd been drowning for years. His hands tangled in her hair, tilting her head to deepen the kiss, and she melted into him, feeling the bond sing with joy. When they finally broke apart, foreheads pressed together, both catching their breath, Evren made herself speak. Ask me to stay, she whispered. After this is over, ask me, and I'll think about it. Hope lit up his face, bright and vulnerable. I can work with that. Don't get cocky. Wouldn't dream of it. He kissed her again, softer this time. Come on. We should get back before they send a search party. He took her hand, threading their fingers together like it was the most natural thing in the world. And for the first time in her life, Evren let herself hope. The attack came 4 days later. Evren was in the library with Brea, learning to read the old histories, when her wolf suddenly surged to the surface. Not a shift, just an overwhelming sense of wrong that made her leap to her feet, knocking her chair backward. My lady? Brea's face creased with concern. What is it? Something's coming. She was running before she finished the sentence, following an instinct she didn't understand, the bond pulling her toward Theron with desperate urgency. She found him in the war room, surrounded by his advisors, his face carved from ice. Everyone out, he said the moment she appeared. His voice left no room for argument. The advisors scattered, leaving them alone. What happened? Evren demanded. Theron held up a scroll, the wax seal already broken. This arrived an hour ago, from the conspirators. She took it with trembling hands and read. We know the Valdris girl lives. We know she's in your stronghold. Surrender her by the next full moon, or we'll burn your kingdom to ash and take her from the rubble. You cannot protect her. You cannot hide her. She belongs to us, and she always has. The parchment crumpled in her fist. The next full moon was 12 days away. They knew, she breathed. They knew the moment I left the island. Someone told them. Theron's eyes flared gold. Someone in my court. Someone I trusted. Who? I don't know yet, but I will. The promise was lethal. Evren, listen to me. I'm going to send you somewhere safe, a hidden location where— No. Evren. I said no. She met his gaze with iron she hadn't known she possessed. Running didn't save me before. It just delayed the inevitable. I'm done hiding. They want to kill you. Let them try. Her wolf was pacing beneath her skin, hungry for the fight. You said it yourself, I'm the last Valdris. My existence threatens everything they've built. If I run, they'll never stop hunting me. But if I stay, if I fight, maybe we can end this. You could die. I could have died 1,000 times on that island. I didn't. She stepped closer, taking his hands in hers. I endured alone for 10 years. I don't have to endure alone anymore. Theron's control cracked. He drew her into his arms, burying his face in her hair, his whole body trembling. If anything happens to you, it won't. Because you'll be there. She pulled back to look at him. We do this together. No more protecting me from the sidelines. I want to fight beside you. You're not ready. You're training? Then make me ready. Her voice was steel. We have 12 days. Teach me everything. For a long moment he just stared at her. Then something shifted in his expression and she saw acceptance, and beneath it, fierce pride. Together, he said finally. Together. He kissed her hard, a promise and a plea wrapped into one. I'm going to tear them apart, he growled against her lips. Anyone who threatens you, anyone who thinks they can touch you, I will destroy them all. I know. She smiled, sharp and dangerous. I'm counting on it. The traitor revealed themselves 3 days before the full moon. Theron had kept his word for 9 days, barely leaving her side. But that evening, an urgent summons from the border patrol pulled him to the war room. He'd posted 4 guards outside her door, kissed her forehead, and promised to return within the hour. He never made it back in time. Evren was alone in her chambers, preparing for bed, when her wolf suddenly snarled a warning. She spun just as the door burst open, the guards outside crumpling to the floor. Lord Kalin, one of Theron's most trusted advisors, a man who'd welcomed her to the stronghold with warm smiles and warmer words. Now he stood in her doorway with murder in his eyes and a silver blade in his hand. Pity, he said, advancing. I rather liked you. But you're too dangerous to live. Evren didn't scream, didn't freeze. She let her wolf take over. The shift was faster than before, fueled by rage and terror. She lunged at Kalin in wolf form, jaws snapping at his throat. He slashed with the silver blade, opening a line of fire across her shoulder, but she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. They crashed through furniture, snarling and struggling. Kalin was strong, trained, but Evren was fighting for her life. She'd been doing that since she was 8 years old. Her teeth found his wrist. She bit down with everything she had. He screamed, the blade clattering to the floor. Then Theron was there. He didn't even bother shifting, just grabbed Kalin by the throat and slammed him against the wall with enough force to crack the stone. You. The word was barely human. You sat at my table, swore loyalty to my face, and all this time I was serving the true power. Kalin choked out. You think you're a king? You're nothing. A boy playing at war. Lord Marin will— His words cut off as Theron's grip tightened. Lord Marin. The name dropped like poison. Theron's face went pale with shock before hardening into lethal fury. The head of the Eastern Council, my father's oldest friend. He's been planning this for 20 years. The Valdris massacre, your father's death, all of it. Kalin laughed, blood bubbling on his lips. And you never suspected. None of you did. Evren shifted back, clutching her wounded shoulder. Where is he? The Black Spire Fortress. Kalin's eyes rolled toward her. Waiting for you. He always knew you'd come. You're the key to everything, little wolf. The last piece of a puzzle you can't even comprehend. Theron looked at Evren. She saw the question in his eyes, the desperate need to keep her safe, warring with the knowledge that this would never end until they finished it. Black Spire, she said firmly, tonight. They rode through the darkness like vengeance incarnate. 20 warriors, all volunteers, all willing to die for their king and the woman he'd chosen. Evren rode beside Theron, her wound bandaged but still burning, her wolf howling for blood beneath her skin. Black Spire Fortress was exactly as fearsome as its name suggested. A tower of obsidian stone rising from a jagged cliff, surrounded by treacherous terrain that had claimed countless armies over the centuries. But they weren't an army. They were a strike force. Theron led them through a passage Kaelin had revealed under duress, a hidden tunnel that emerged inside the fortress walls. They moved in silence, taking out guards with brutal efficiency, working their way toward the central tower. Lord Marin was waiting for them. He stood in a grand hall lined with ancient tapestries, flanked by at least 30 armed men. He was older than Evren expected, silver-haired and distinguished, with eyes that held no warmth whatsoever. Theron. He smiled like a grandfather greeting a wayward child. And the little Valdris remnant, how touching that you came together. It's over, Marin. Theron's voice echoed through the chamber. Your conspiracy is exposed. Your allies are being rounded up as we speak. Surrender now, and I'll grant you a clean death. Marin laughed softly. You think this is about politics? About power? He shook his head. This is about correction. The Valdris bloodline was never meant to endure. They were an aberration, a mutation that threatened the natural order. I've spent my life ensuring that mistake was erased. Evren stepped forward, her voice unwavering despite her racing heart. I'm still standing. Not for long. Marin's eyes gleamed. Do you know why you were kept on that island, child? Why we didn't simply kill you? Enlighten me. Because your blood is the key to a ritual that will ensure no Valdris is ever born again. You were being preserved, aged to maturity, like a fine wine. His smile turned cruel. Tonight was always the night you were meant to die. We simply didn't expect you to bring yourself to us. Evren felt the blood drain from her face. All of it, her entire endurance, had been calculated. She'd never been forgotten. She'd been cultivated. Kill them, Marin said calmly. Bring me the girl alive. Chaos erupted. Theron shifted mid-leap, his massive black wolf tearing through the first line of guards. His warriors followed, steel clashing against steel, howls splitting the air. Evren shifted too, but instead of joining the fray, she did something no one expected. She ran straight for Marin. He didn't anticipate it, had assumed she'd cower, hide behind Theron like a fragile prize. Instead, a silver-white wolf slammed into him with the force of 10 years of rage, knocking him to the ground. She didn't give him time to recover. Her jaws closed around his arm, the same arm that had signed her family's death warrant. He screamed, thrashing, but she held on, pinning him with her weight. Evren! Theron's voice cut through the noise. She released Marin just long enough to shift back, grabbing the ceremonial knife from his belt. Her knee pressed into his chest, the blade at his throat. The ritual, she snarled. How do I stop it? You can't. Blood stained his teeth. It's bound to my bloodline. Only my death can... He stopped, realizing what he'd admitted. Evren smiled grimly. Thank you for the information. Wait. Theron appeared beside her, fully human now, his body covered in blood that wasn't his. We need him alive. He knows who else is involved. He orchestrated my family's murder. Your father's murder. I know. Theron's hand closed over hers on the knife. And he'll answer for it. Publicly. Let the kingdom see him broken before he dies. Then his death ends the ritual forever. Evren's whole body shook with the need for violence. But she looked into Theron's eyes, saw the same rage tempered by strategy, and slowly released her grip. Chain him, Theron ordered his warriors. Heavily. We're taking him back to face justice." As Marin was dragged away, Evren finally let herself exhale. The battle was over. The guards were dead or surrendering. And somehow, miraculously, she was still alive. Theron wrapped her in his arms, holding her so tightly she could feel his heartbeat against hers. "You scared me," he murmured against her hair, running at him like that. "I made it." "You did more than make it." He pulled back, his eyes fierce with pride. "You won." The trial lasted 3 days. Marin's conspiracy ran deeper than anyone had imagined. 17 members of the court were implicated, including 3 council lords and the captain of the Eastern Guard. The evidence was overwhelming, much of it extracted from Marin's own records, meticulous documentation of every murder, every bribe, and every betrayal spanning 2 decades. One by one, they were sentenced. The lesser conspirators received exile. The major players received death. Marin went last. His execution shattered the blood magic he'd been building for decades. Without the architect, the ritual collapsed, its components rendered permanently inert. The Valdris line was safe. Evren didn't attend the execution. Instead, she stood on the cliff overlooking the valley, the same spot where she and Theron had shared their first kiss, and let herself feel the weight of it all. It was over. The people who had destroyed her family, stolen her childhood, left her to rot on a cursed island, they were gone. And she had no idea what came next. "I thought I'd find you here." She didn't turn as Theron approached. Didn't need to. She'd felt him coming through the bond, a warm presence drawing closer. "It's done," he said, stopping beside her. "Marin is dead. The conspiracy is finished. The ritual died with him." "I know." She stared at the distant mountains. "I felt it when he died. Like a chain breaking. Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken things. "The blood oath is fulfilled," Theron said finally. "Your enemies are destroyed. You're free to go wherever you want. Do whatever you choose." His voice was calm, but she felt his ache through the bond. "I'll give you gold, supplies, an escort to anywhere in the known world. You don't owe me anything. Is that what you want?" Evren turned to face him. "For me to leave? What I want doesn't matter. I made you a promise." "That's not what I asked." Theron's jaw clenched. For a long moment he didn't speak. Then, with visible effort, he met her eyes. "I want you to stay," he said roughly. "I want to wake up beside you every morning and fall asleep with you every night. I want to rule with you, fight with you, build something lasting with you." His voice cracked. "But I want you to choose that. Freely. Not because of obligation or bonds or nowhere else to go." Evren studied him, this king who had crossed cursed waters to find her, who had held her through her awakening, who had fought beside her rather than in front of her, who looked at her like she was the most precious thing in his world. She thought about the island, about the girl she'd been, feral and alone, certain she'd die there. She thought about the woman she'd become. "I choose you," she said softly. Theron went very still. "Evren, I choose this. Not because I have nowhere else to go, but because there's nowhere else I want to be." She stepped closer, taking his face in her hands. "Ask me to stay, Theron." His eyes flared amber. "Stay. Forever? Forever." She kissed him, and what bound them together blazed like the sun. 3 months later, the kingdom had transformed. With the conspiracy purged, Theron's rule stabilized in ways that had seemed unimaginable before. Trade routes reopened. Alliances strengthened. The people, sensing safety for the first time in years, began to flourish. And at the heart of it all was Evren. She'd taken to politics with the same ferocity she'd brought to the island. The council members who'd initially dismissed her as a feral curiosity quickly learned their mistake. She remembered every slight, every underestimation, and she used that memory to outmaneuver them at every turn. "You're making them nervous," Theron told her one evening, watching her dismantle a trade proposal with surgical precision. Good. She smiled sweetly. They should be nervous. But it wasn't all politics. On the nights when the moon was full, they ran together through the mountain forests, two wolves wild and free. On quiet mornings, she taught him techniques she'd learned on the island, laughing at his fumbled attempts to set snares. And slowly, carefully, she began to heal. The nightmares still came sometimes. Memories of hunger and loneliness and the terrible certainty that no one was coming. But Theron was always there when she woke, pulling her close, anchoring her to the present. "I've got you," he would murmur. "You're not alone anymore." And she wasn't. For the first time in 18 years, she truly wasn't. On a crisp autumn morning, Theron led her blindfolded through the stronghold, ignoring her protests with infuriating calm. When he finally removed the cloth, she found herself standing in a courtyard she'd never seen before. It had been transformed into a garden. Not the cultivated elegance of the main grounds, but something wilder, featuring native plants from the Vale. Species she recognized from her island, arranged around a central fountain carved from volcanic rock. "I had seeds and cuttings brought from the island," Theron said quietly. "I wanted you to have a piece of it here, the parts worth keeping." Evren couldn't speak. Her throat was too tight, her eyes burning. "You gave me my life back," she finally managed. "You gave me all of this. You gave me more." He turned her to face him, his expression open and unguarded. "You gave me purpose beyond revenge. You gave me a future I never thought I'd have." "Theron." "I had a speech prepared," he said, his voice rough, "about destiny and bonds and everything we've endured. But I don't want to give you speeches anymore. I just want to give you the truth." He dropped to one knee. Evren's heart stopped. "I love you," Theron said simply. "Not because the bond tells me to. Not because of politics or bloodlines or any of the reasons a king should love a queen. I love you because you're the strongest person I've ever known. Because you make me better. Because I can't imagine facing another day without you beside me." He reached into his coat and withdrew a ring, a simple band of silver set with a stone as blue as the waters surrounding her island. "Evren of the Valdris line, survivor of the Vale, my mate and my equal in all things," he said. "Will you bond with me? Not as an obligation or an alliance, but as a choice? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of you?" She was crying now. She, who hadn't cried for 10 years on that island, was crying without shame. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, you relentless man. Yes." Theron slid the ring onto her finger with trembling hands. Then he surged to his feet and kissed her, lifting her off the ground, spinning her around until they were both dizzy and laughing. "I love you," she said against his lips. "I love you. Keep saying it." He was grinning, tears on his own cheeks. "I'll never get tired of hearing it." The bonding ceremony was held under the full moon. The entire kingdom attended, or tried to. The courtyard overflowed with well-wishers, and the celebration stretched through every street. Evren wore a gown of silver silk that matched her wolf's fur, her wild hair tamed into elaborate braids threaded with moonflowers. Theron wore ceremonial black, his family crest emblazoned over his heart. When they spoke their vows, promising partnership and choice, and love freely given, Evren felt what bound them shift into something permanent, something unbreakable. "I choose you," Theron said, his voice carrying across the silent crowd. "In this life and every life after, through war and peace, joy and sorrow, until the stars burn out and the mountains fall." "I choose you back," Evren answered, her voice clear despite her racing heart. "My king, my mate, my home." He kissed her, and the crowd erupted. The celebration lasted until dawn. There was feasting and dancing and toasts that grew increasingly ridiculous as the wine flowed. Brea cried happy tears. The warriors who'd fought beside them at Black Spire raised their glasses in endless salutes. Later, much later, they finally escaped to their chambers. Theron loved her slowly, reverently, whispering promises against her skin. And Evren loved him back with all she had, finally understanding what it meant to belong. Afterward, they lay tangled together, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her back. "Tell me something," he murmured. "Something I don't know." Evren thought for a moment. "When I was alone on the island, I used to dream about rescue. But in the dreams, I was always disappointed. Whoever found me was never enough. Never right." She lifted her head to look at him. "When you appeared in those trees, I was scared, but I wasn't disappointed. Even then, some part of me knew." His eyes softened. "Knew what?" "That I'd been waiting for you. I just didn't know it yet." Theron kissed her forehead. "Your turn. Tell me something." "I'm happy," she said simply. "I didn't know I could be this happy. Didn't know it was allowed." "It's allowed," he promised. "It's mandatory, actually. Alpha King's orders." She laughed, the sound bright and free. "I love you." "I love you more." "Not possible." "Watch me prove it." He rolled her beneath him, grinning. "Every day, for the rest of our lives." Evren woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the sound of Theron's heartbeat beneath her ear. She thought about the girl she'd been, alone on a forbidden island, convinced she'd die there without ever knowing why. That girl wouldn't recognize her now, wouldn't believe any of this was possible. But it was. All of it. The love, the belonging, the future stretching bright before them. Theron had tracked her scent across cursed waters, had fought through betrayal and conspiracy and insurmountable odds to find her, and she'd endured long enough to let him. Fair trade, she thought, smiling as sleep reclaimed her. She'd been alone for 10 years. Now she'd never be alone again. Where are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. I love hearing your thoughts. And if you'd like to support me, please subscribe. It's free, and it helps more people discover these stories.